Today's video is a follow-up to an earlier video we made about linking front ends and back ends in Microsoft Access. So I have local SQL Server open here, and we're going to be working with the Northwind database. And I also made a new blank database here, a new blank access database here. And so right off the bat, I just felt it would be better to do with a clean slate. So there's nothing in here. It's completely empty. We're going to start from scratch. And we're going to go through the process of linking this database, not from Access, like we did in the previous video. We'll put the links from that, not from Access, but from SQL Server. Yeah, so that's what we're going to review. So a lot of this you've seen before. I'll go through it slowly sooner. You'd have to watch the previous video. We're going to go to external data, new data source, then we're going to go from database, and instead of selecting Access, we're going to select from SQL Server. So it's going to do that. Now we're still going to do this link by creating the link table. Now, here's where we have this this box here, select data source. Now, what it's asking us to do is to select an ODBC data source. And the first time we make this connection, we're going to use what's called a DSN. That's where he'd use the first time, because that's what we have to use the first time. We can relink the databases later on, but first we have to get the tables into Access. And so we have code that we can use to relink backend tables. But until we actually have those tables in the database, or I should say links to those tables in the database, we're not really going to be able to use it. So first time around, we're going to create a DSN. Now, a DSN is a nice, convenient way to do this, because I could select any DSN from my list and not have to enter a login information. The problem is if I were to copy this front-end database to another computer, it's not going to connect, because a machine data source, a user data source cannot be, it will not be copied from computer to computer. So if you do this process and I copy the front end to another computer, it doesn't work. That's why it's looking for a DSN that's not there. So that's why we generally prefer a DSN-less connection. So let's go ahead and, since the biggest source is not available to us, we'll just go with user data source. And now we're going to create a new data source. And we're going to select, now would you recommend ODBC driver 17 for SQL Server rather than the SQL Server or the native client? So we're going to select this. Make sure this computer is going to have the driver on it because it installs with SQL Server. But any client machines, you're going to copy this over to make sure they have the ODBC 17 driver installed, which is a free download from Microsoft. So again, that's another point you need to be aware of. So we're going to click next. We're going to go to finish. And this is where we need to put in the information, the connection information. So I would have to be real fancy here. This is on a local server. I didn't want to overcomplicating it by using a SQL Server login. So we're just going to name this test BXN. That way I know to remove it with it. And then we're going to use this just with the integrated Windows authentication, because the database is local. Now, you could certainly, if it's an SQL Server login and you have a particular login and password, then you can use this. So that, yes, if you have the SQL Server login, that you take a login and password here. For the purpose of this video, it's even a little bit simpler than that, because, like I said, the server's on the same machine. So I could just use what we call a trusted connection, meaning that, oh, I see, the database is on this computer. Okay, I trust you. There's no need for an SQL Server log. Once we do that, change the default database. Now, again, it should connect and show me all the databases I have here. We're going to use Northwind. Okay, and that's really all we need to do here. So this is, we did this kind of a simple way. Test data source, just test being correctly, successfully. And so I kind of ran along a little bit here, but just to sum up, I'm using the local server, so I didn't need a login and password. If I did need a login and password, I could enter one from SQL Server. After all that, let's click OK. And now we have our test DSN here. So I'm going to click, by the way, that's the being a ninja before about having it be some. Once we've created this, I don't need to go through that process again of selecting the server and logging in. It's now in here. All I have to do, if I wanted to make another database on this computer with the same source, all I would have to do is select this a second kind and leave you right in. So that's short. Okay, now we're going to select which tables to link. Now the database doesn't have a password on it. That's the other reason I didn't choose a database with us through a login because, unfortunately, Microsoft, if I didn't say save password means you don't have to enter the SQL password over and over and over again. But it's going to make you save it's going to ask you for each individual table. Do I say the password for categories? Do you want to save it for customers? Do you want to save it for employees? And it's just that's going to take a long time. Unfortunately, also, there's no way there's no shift click and I can select all these with. So, and not compute select faults, that's going to get us all these system tables. So I'll just select these individually. You're on too many of them. And I'm not going to quit save password because we don't have a password for local connection. So again, otherwise, it would bother us to save password for each and every one of these. Almost done here. Okay, there we go. Okay. And so sometimes if the table doesn't have a primary key or some other unique identifier, it's going to have to do this. So I mean, you generally want to do this. In some tables, it doesn't really matter where you could, or both of these can be the primary selling. Like the product, let's show you, well, the product ID, sales totals, that's again a query. Summary of sales by quarter. So some of these are probably views. Okay, yes, they're views. So the view is kind of like that. It's kind of like a saved query. All right, so, and we aren't, just like when we have the access backend, you notice that now we can access these tables, but once again, you see a different icon now. It's a little bit, but now you have the globe instead of the table icon. And again, this arrow pointing to the globe means that the database is linked, but the tables are in the cloud, so to speak. I mean, even though they're on this backend database, in this case, is on the same computer, but that's the icon that is used. So we can make, I'm not for the 2 people instance, but we can make a click form based on the fodder plus, let's say. I'm just going to use the form wizard. Right, so I'm just going to take the shortcut. Product ID and product name. And we can make a quick form from this. So that's how you would do this, at least how you would set it up initially. Now, as I ventured before, we're going to have a problem if we try to copy this to another computer, because this these are connected using a VSN. I hover over this. If you see DSN equals test DSN, there's nothing that's really telling Access where to look for the backend. It just says, look at this DSN, but if you're on a computer that doesn't have that DSN, Access doesn't know where to look. So what can we do? Well, this is another reason why I want to start with a clean database. What we often do is in the, let's finger, this form is the main form, right? Product list. So I might go to make that the display form. So in other words, this is the form that's going to show I'm startup. Just because the pro I'm going to show you, it's just easier to put into a form. So I'm being a little simplistic here. What I want to do is, so if I copy this from another computer, the links will still be in here, but I need to tell it what it's linking to. I mean, the links using a BSN, if that BSN doesn't exist, you get problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little bit in front. This will run when the for loads. And since this is the form that the default form, it's going to basically it's going to start whenever the application starts. Ordinarily, we used to be a little more fancy. We use an auto exec macro, but again, I don't want to overcomplicate things. That's not the purpose of this video. So yeah, what we want to do, if we want to put in code that will relink SQL Server tables, if that needs to be done. Okay, so what I've done is I've copied some code from another project, and what this is going to do, this relink SQL tables, if this is going to run when the program starts up, and it's going to tell Access where to get information on the back end from, since presumably we'll be loading it on a computer that doesn't have that DSN. As a matter of fact, ultimately the test is I'm going to remove the DSN and see if the database still connects. So I copied this. We're going to make a few changes. We do need to say what the connection string is. A connection string is basically a string in a particular format that tells the location, the server, the database's name, any volume information. So already could change the server and the database. So again, I will important connection. Yes, that should be all we need. So what it's going to do, it's going to go to every table in the database, and it's going to take that table and set its connection string to this. It's in doing so, it's going to override the current connection string, which tells it to look to the DSN. So if the DSN's not there, if you go ahead and look at this, we're not really going to need it right now because we still have the DSN in there. But let's go ahead. So I'm just going to press play until the rest of these tables are reconnected, and there we go. Same thing as before, right? We can open tables, and now if I hover over, see, before it said DSN equals. It doesn't say that it has undo connection string yet. So let's go back to the DSN for a moment. Reconnect these through the DSN. That would be a bit much quicker because this time all I have to do is select the test DSN. I don't have to select the server, enter the password, or anything like that. I can just go right to the database. Okay, so now these are once again connected to the DSN. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to remove the DSN from the computer. So I go to my ODBC data sources, and you're left test DSN, we're going to remove. So this will mimic dropping the database to another computer that doesn't have that DSN on it. So let's go ahead and start up the database again. It can't connect to the test DSN because test DSN isn't there. Removing the DSN here is mimicking the copying of the database to another computer. And so this is not going to work. Well, it doesn't know, and the links are still there, but it doesn't know what the link to. So, it's going to print the cable name. It's going to refresh the link, and if it's going to go. So let's go ahead and now the tables are reconnected. And anyway, but that's pretty much it. Now we have a functioning form again. Well, okay, we don't want this to run every time the form goes. So this was kind of a slapped together in Devil. So this was only, but that's the idea that tells you. So we've got over how to link to an SQL Server database as a backend, and how to relink, how to do it two different ways. We did the first with the DSN. The second one it's called a DSN-less connection because now we're not dependent. I removed that DSN that I created earlier, and yet the database still functions. All right, this was around a long video, but I hope this was informative and helpful. And now you know how to connect the database to an SQL Server backend. What better yet, have us do it for you.